everyone. We are really excited to have our first ever virtual Nature Lab permaculture walk today. We have 3 people with their boots on the ground who Sujin has choreographed a walk through our block, and we'll explain that more. And for all of you people who are part of our wonderful virtual walk, your chat window is a great way to give feedback, to ask questions. And then if it's, if it fits in and somebody calls on you, one of the presenters, you could go live and speak with your mic on. And so while we're doing this, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Branda Miller, and I'm the Arts and Education Coordinator at the Sanctuary. We had this as a real event, and we were very, very sad when we had to, close down the Sanctuary, cancel all the live events. And we missed Sujin, who moved back home to Seoul, Korea. But you have persevered, Sujin, and you really want to do this. Yeah, it's so cool. And so I'm just deeply honored to have worked with you as a mentor and advisor, along with Kathy High and actually Simone Johnson at the time. And I feel like you're getting us to move to new heights with our education around Nature Lab. And so I thank you. Let us know if you're having any problems. It'll just be a 5-minute social hour.
So this is our first, virtual permaculture walk. So this is really exciting, Sujin. Were you motivated to do this because you were missing the real thing and then just decided this would be the substitute? It's really awesome.
Yeah, I think the people at the sanctuary first reached out to me and said this was an option. So I thought it was a great idea. And we started brainstorming, I think 4 weeks ago. And then we started planning.
Awesome.
And Sujin, your interview, Sujin, was really cool. What was that experience like being interviewed for SIM?
It was really nervous because it was the first time I was being interviewed, but I think it was a fun experience. And I know I'm gonna have to do that for the next day for my school for Signature Day and Emma Artist Day. So
you'll be an old pro by then.
Yes. Kathy is going to give us an orientation of Nature Lab. And Kathy, maybe you can put it in the context of the entire sanctuary. One of the big things of the sanctuary is called our Be the Media workshop series. And in a way, this is not only a Nature Lab workshop, but a Be the Media workshop series. Because Sujin is the media right now. She's taking the voice, she's taking a leadership role. She's creating a mediated experience of a walk in North Rroy at a time when we can't do it. And we thank you for your strength and your courage and your hard work that's brought you here today, Sujin.
Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. It's really exciting to be joining this esteemed group of people, and especially from our international colleague here, Sujin. So the Sanctuary for Independent Media was started about 15 years ago, and we moved into a kind of somewhat abandoned church on 6th Avenue and 101st Street in North Rroy. And that church became a center for a lot of the different activity we've been doing, which includes presentations of films and music, bringing in speakers, and now we have a radio station there, WOOC WOOC FM 105.3, and it's a local radio station where they produce a local news program 5 nights a week from 6 to 7 p.m. You can listen to it Eastern Standard Time. It's also on the website. Since we started that, working with that building and presenting events, we sort of branched out into other areas on the block, trying to take what would be otherwise abandoned lots or abandoned buildings and turning them into something that have actual projects in them. Our mission is around social and environmental justice, and we're really interested in combining those things with a kind of creative output and emphasis on art making. So there's always that side of it. And there's kind of a pyramid of 3 points that really drive us and our programming and our education and our thinking. One is art, one is media, and one is science. So we have this little triangle of art, media, and science that are the 3 areas that we work around. And incidentally, these are the 3 things that are really being attacked in our country at this point. These 3 areas are undervalued and not supported in the ways that we think that they should be. And so out of those, nodes of art and media and science, we have Nature Lab, which is another project of the sanctuary, which was started probably about 8 years ago. And, we've been doing it for longer than that because we've been working on developing gardens in the lots that we had taken over. But we came up with this idea to really focus on environmental justice as well as social justice. And so we started to look at the kind of pollutants and contaminations that were hounding this economically challenged area in North Rroy. So we have really built up this area of Nature Lab, and we are moving into a newly renovated abandoned building that we have been working on for the past couple of years to kind of fix up so we can open it as an environmental center. So it's going to be super beautiful, just down the block from the main building of the sanctuary. And in that building, we're going to have on the first floor a community biology lab, which will be, if anybody's a scientist here, BSL level 1. So that's a biosafety level 1 lab. So you can't get anybody really in trouble. It's like a high school level, laboratory, but we will be able to teach community members laboratory techniques and science techniques that they could use both to study research projects that we'll be working on around soil, air, and water contamination. So this is really exciting. And upstairs from that laboratory, we're also going to be using that upstairs space kind of as a more cozy nook kind of an area where we'll have various projects going on, but one of the ones we're really excited about is the Health Autonomy Clinic. And the Health Autonomy Clinic focuses on well-being and self-care, and also helping people understand how to access this kind of crazy medical system that we have that as we all know, is pretty broken right now. So we're really excited that we were able to move some of our programming since we had to close the sanctuary, as Branda said, in March. We have moved a lot of the programming to a virtual platform. And so it's really great that we have the technology to be able to do this. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And we want to introduce Sujin, who's going to introduce the first ever Nature Lab virtual permaculture walk. Sujin.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Sujin, and I want to welcome you to this workshop today. I'm a junior at Willard School, and I'm from Seoul, South Korea. I was partnered up with the sanctuary through my school's STEAM program, and I was introduced to the idea of permaculture at the sanctuary, alongside with amazing people and the places within the area. Through my permaculture project, I wanted to spread the awareness of permaculture to you so that you could implement this idea to your lives. I think that permaculture helps us to change our perspective on the world. And for me personally, after my research on permaculture, I became more aware of my surroundings and the relationships that were involved in nature. Before, I had a misconception that permaculture was a complicated idea that wasn't seen in daily life, but I knew I was wrong after researching. I never realized how greatly permaculture impacted our ecosystem, especially in our community. Even in North Rroy, there's so many great examples of permaculture that you would have never spotted if you didn't join into our workshop today. I think that you'll be able to carry something valuable with you today, and I hope that everyone can make at least some form of action that corresponds with the value of permaculture after today's virtual workshop. And I hope you enjoy. So next up, Mr. Callis is going to explain about our STEAM program at Emma Willard School.
Hi, my name is John Callis, and I'm the chair of experiential learning at Emma Willard School. I run the STEAM research program that Sujin is part of. I'm really excited to take part in this tour today, and I'm really proud of Sujin and her project. Sujin has been an intern at the sanctuary since September. Our STEAM interns participate in year-long experiences at university and organizations across the Capital District, just like the sanctuary. During this year, Sujin has opened our eyes to the wonders and the importance of permaculture, especially during this pandemic. This has been a terrific opportunity to develop Emma Willard's relationship with the Troy community, as well as the amazing people at the sanctuary. I want to thank Brenda so much for supporting Sujin and her project and everyone that's part of the project that we'll see today. And I'm just so impressed with the creative outcome that we've had given everything that's happened in the spring.
Wonderful, thank you. And we are introducing you right now to the basement where Sujin did all of her work on permaculture research. And this is the basement of the Sanctuary for Independent Media in North Rroy. Welcome Alexis, who is the person who is, turn your camera around for a second so we see you, if you want, do a selfie. Alexis. There she is. So Alexis is our boots on the ground. Thank you, Alexis. And Kathy, why don't you give us the intro to the Sanctuary Nature Lab as Alexis shows us the space. And then Sujin, you are going to direct Alexis to what you want to bring out of our science displays here and take upstairs on your walk. So
Thank
Kathy,
you.
It's up for you now.
Great. Thanks. And thanks, Alexis, for being our guided tour person. So we have, we're looking at the displays for the Nature Lab that a project we've been working on for the past number of years. So you can see here things like this is an aquaponics system where the plants and the fish interact by feeding each other and keeping each other, absorbing each other's nutrients, and sort of the plants grow because of the fish poop actually, and the fish's water is cleaned by the plants themselves. So it's a really beautiful kind of balanced system that has been developed. We've had bigger systems, and this is just a showcase one. Below that, we're looking at different things like water testing we did last summer in Troy to test for lead in people's pipes. This is obviously spurred by events from Flint, Michigan and Hoosick Falls. And the good news is we found that there probably isn't much problem from the lead pipes, from pipes that are the city pipes in Troy. If there are problems, it'll be from old pipes in the houses. So this is a project that will continue to be ongoing. And Alexis is pointing out some, really dangerous corrosive chemicals. Thank you. And below this, we have a display from a workshop we did with Ecovative. Ecovative is an amazing company here in the Troy area that works with mycelium, which is fungi or mushrooms, to develop a packaging material. So they were trying to replace, the horrid styrofoam with these kinds of pre-made molds. And actually IKEA is using their material now when they ship out their furniture and everything else that they do. So, and this is completely compostable material. So you can throw it into your garden when you're through with it, or you can just keep your little teddy bear and look at it. So they're a wonderful, very green organization in this area that has been grown up here. We also have kind of, little dissecting kits. This is a drawing. Yeah, good. That's great. Thanks, Alexis. This is a drawing of what we hope the backyard to the new nature lab will look like, where we have gardens and composting areas, people sitting around having meetings or just tea, and that would be really amazing. I think that below this, we have a wonderful book by one of our colleagues, Abby Kinchy, called Science by the People, which talks about citizen science and this kind of community science, which is taken up by people participating in science, is a beautiful model that we're also looking at the sanctuary. What Alexis is showing us now are workshops that Abby worked with a sociologist from Santiago, Chile, and they are trying to develop do-it-yourself kits to test for contamination in the soil that they're developing in Chile for arsenic, because there's a lot of copper mining, and that's the tailings of the mines add arsenic into the soil. And in Troy, we're working on developing DIY kits to test for lead in the soil, which, as we all know, is a real problem here from history of lead and gasoline and things like this. We have composting worms below that. And then you saw earlier some of the samples, preserved samples that have been donated to us. So we think of this as a kind of little natural history museum. Yes, those were donated to us by they're really kind of gross, I know, but they're also kind of awesome because you can see these creatures that all came from, most of them came from the Hudson River, both the north end where we are, all the way down to New York City, although there's a scorpion, so that doesn't really count. So thank you, Alexis. This is really great. The one thing that Alexis is pointing to now are these amazing seed bombs that are kind of like little mud packs of these seeds. So there she's holding up a magnolia one, and there's all kinds of them there. And you can take these seed bombs and actually toss them into an area and try to propagate it with wildflowers that do amazing accumulation work of metals and things like that. Sujin, do you want to say anything about seed bombs?
Yeah, one of the research that I conducted at the sanctuary was about seed bombs, and I never knew that these things existed before coming to the sanctuary. And I thought it was really cool that you can just toss them into the ground and then they'll grow into plants. And also, one of the seed bombs that I actually enjoyed researching was about calendulas, and I never knew how they correlated with permaculture, but I've learned that calendulas have this thick fibrous roots that can act as cover crops that benefits other plants as well. And also they can attract insects to the garden that can help the gardening system.
Thank you. Yeah, they're really amazing, and you can propagate seed bombs with any kinds of seeds you want. It's really great to go through like an urban area that's looking a little bit blighted and bomb it with wildflowers that'll propagate or something like that. So it's a really wonderful technique.
So Sujin, do you want to ask Alexis to take some of those up so that we can all throw seed bombs with you?
Yeah, could you take them upstairs?
Okay, so
I sure can. I think I'm gonna take these marigold.
Nice.
And, maybe
Great.
some the calendula.
Beautiful. You're doing great, Alexis. Thank you for this.
and now we're going out into the hallway. We'll give you a little more information about some nature lab projects, and then up out onto the street for our permaculture walk.
Our beautifully painted door by one of our other ex-interns, Joffrey, and there's Spencer. Yay.
Okay, hi Spencer. Yeah.
Nice to see you. I love that.
So we have multiple cameras on the ground.
Awesome. So you've walked into the hallway downstairs also, and this is a kind of photo exhibit that we have from the work that we did with our Uptown Summer Youth about 2 years ago. And there are various projects that we took on. One of the ones that was really interesting to me was that we began some testing of the Hudson River for antibiotic resistant bacteria. So we have read about this in the news, that these are, there's a problem with antibiotic resistant bacteria everywhere and leading to different kinds of diseases and the kind of ways that antibiotics aren't working. We decided to test the Hudson and in fact found some evidence that there probably are bacteria like this there that have developed to be strong enough to outwit the antibiotics. So we know that it's a problem. It's not really, hard data, but it was a really interesting project. We worked with a high school teacher, science teacher, who led the youth in it. And there I am examining Petri dishes. The other thing that is really great was, here's the group. This is everybody who was participating in that summer's Uptown Summer, both the youth who are from the local community and around the area of the sanctuary, and also all the mentors. So it's a beautiful gathering of wonderful and talented people. One of the things we did was to put on a charrette, which is a kind of a studio design think tank, where we asked people to sit down and talk about what are some of the things that you think are needed in the neighborhood of the sanctuary, and what can Nature Lab kind of tackle as a challenge. And we had all kinds of beautiful suggestions put forward, but one of the things that was really came up over and over and over again was the fact that because of the economic challenges, which lead to health challenges, education challenges, etc., there's need for health care. There's need for and that's how we've developed the Health Autonomy Clinic. And you can see here, these are participants led by the youth in developing these kind of themes as to what will be needed for the Nature Lab that we're developing. So, and then these are just a little bit more of the displays. And here's a great one on composting. I think Sujin will talk more about composting outside when you go outside, and we'll show you some real ground composting. There's also seed collections. One of our graduate students at RPI is working with a seed bank. By the way, Branda and I both are professors at RPI in the arts department. So we are lucky enough to also work with students from there. So yes, we have a seed swap pretty much every year. I guess not this year, but we will be doing it again in the future. So these are things collected from the Hudson, and we're going upstairs.
This is so neat because when Sujin and I visited in September, that photo installation was going up on the walls.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was great.
Yay. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to you, Sujin, and thank you all. This has been it's really great.
Okay, so I'm going to share a screen of the map of the area. So the starred area right here is the sanctuary building, and we're going to visit Freedom Square first, which is located on the left side. And then we're going to move on to the College City Growers Garden. And then lastly, we're going to end by introducing you to the Elot. And I think we're going to learn about these places while we're going on the walk.
Let's show the front of the building. And where is Alexis? Alexis, let me there we are. Okay, let's just give us a little moment to see the front of the sanctuary for independent media. It's very green right now. Alexis, give us a whole view. Thank you.
The front of the building was painted with murals about 5 or 6 years ago. And again, the Uptown Summer Youth from that summer added in slogans and quotes. What were those slogans and quotes, Branda?
Well, there were all kinds of slogans from famous change makers that are all written all over the sanctuary up close. Come visit us when we start having social distance gardening. You can read all the quotes, but this is the sanctuary. And all over the block, there's messages painted by love from young people, community members. And here we are, this is between Glen and 101st on 6th Avenue. And Sujin, do you want to introduce, Kevin, are you here?
Which Kevin are you?
Kevin, as we walk to...
Kevin's here. He's trying to connect.
Oh, okay. So here we are walking to Freedom Square. Freedom Square, we got an NEA, National Endowment for the Arts, creative placemaking grant and built Freedom Square, the stage, where we bring art and culture out onto the community. Here's a peace pool that was actually from the ARC Charter School. And they planted all the shrubs here. This was an abandoned lot with nothing green on it. And we got a grant from the DEC to plant fruit trees on it. It was called From Food Desert to Food Forest. And if you swing around and you look, Alexis, at the bodega behind you, this is a neighborhood that's considered a food desert, right? And so this whole environmental education campus that we have on one block on multiple sites is a greening of a space that has been longing for nature and permaculture. So with that, I will pass it on to Sujin. If Kevin's not on, you can start it with the seed bombs. Kevin, if you just want to do your voice and not your picture, we can have Alexis and Spencer documenting you.
Okay, I'm in Costa Rica and our connection is not good, but the video tends to complicate it. That's why I had the video on.
Okay.
Can you hear my voice?
Yes.
Yes.
So Sujin, you want to introduce Kevin?
Yeah. So Kevin actually helped me learn about permaculture when I was at the sanctuary, and he's going to help us with explanations today. You want to introduce yourself, Kevin?
Yeah, sure. It's a bit loud here with traffic, so let me know if you can hear me. Yeah, I've been teaching and practicing permaculture for over a decade or so, probably longer than I can remember. And I have one of my famous teacher, was one of my first teachers in California in Bolinas, named Penny Livingston, Commonweal Garden. And I like to use it now, mostly. I think it's really valuable nowadays as an educational tool because it's a completely different way of thinking. We're going to talk about. But
We have a lot of wind noise. Is that from you, Kevin, do you think? Alexis, your mic is off, right?
well, we're close to each other. It's just windy here, I think.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of my background, and I think we're gonna take a look over here, and then we're walking down the street, correct?
Let's introduce our College City Grower Gardeners, Azure and Christian and Ember, one of our youngest gardeners, and Francis. And let's let them say hi. And just so we can see, these are people who are doing social distance gardening and keeping our campus going. Francis, what are you up to?
I'm just whacking back this mugwort. This stuff, it's a pretty cool little plant, but it also spreads like crazy. It's actually, what is it? What family is it in Missouri? It's Artemisia. It's also what this right here is in the same family, and this is the herb used to make what's that drink again? What? Absinthe. Right.
Thank you. Good.
So it's spreading all over, and we're trying to get some sun to the other things there, like daylilies and some hops that are growing. And I think there's some other herbs and flowers that we're gonna find as we go through.
Awesome, thank you. And as you can see, it's right next to a bus stop. Azure, can we introduce everyone to you? Azure is a...
Is that Branda?
Hi, hello.
Is this thing? Is this the actual thing happening right now?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there are 30 people watching you, and we are learning about permaculture, and you are a part of it. And why are you passionate about permaculture?
Why am I what? Sorry, I didn't hear the word.
Passionate about permaculture.
I'm passionate about maybe not permaculture per se, but like the practices that are involved. Indigenous practices, for example. I'm from Hawaii, so I find that permaculture is, a way for people to tap into indigenous practices and methods that have been actually overshadowed by dominant culture. So I don't really like to fixate on the word permaculture too much, but more so what's involved with permaculture.
Well, thank you. You know, Azrae, we were going to bring up at the end, but let's bring up at the beginning. When you talk about the Native Americans who were here, you're right at the site of a Mohican village, right, named Umwat's Castle and sacred burial ground. Can you tell us a little bit about, you know, the Stockbridge Munsee Mohicans and how their spirit is part of your hands in the ground right now?
Yeah, well, the Stockbridge Munsee people were driven from this area, and we are, you know, on their sacred territory everywhere where we live today. So I don't know. I feel like you should talk to them about it, honestly.
Okay. Well, you know, we're hoping that we'll even have gardens that use the plants that they planted right here in Freedom Square. And now you're looking at all the fruit trees. Ember, you want to say anything as our youngest gardener?
Tell them all the fruits that you were doing about.
How do the fruits taste, Emby?
Yummy.
What is it? What are you eating, Ember?
What are you eating?
Green cherries over there.
Oh, can you show us? Can you show us where you got them?
Go show them the cherry tree. Go.
Nice. So Sujin, you were going to have us throw seed bombs here. Do you want to take that over? And
Yeah,
Ember can
sure.
help throw seed bombs, I bet.
Okay. Does Alexis have the seed bombs?
Yes.
Would you like to throw them into the
Ember, do you want to
ground?
throw a seed bomb? Do you want to throw one of these marigold ones, Ember?
Sujin, could you tell us a little bit more about these seed bombs and what you learned and what we're doing right now and how that feels for you, being in South Korea?
So if this wasn't virtual, I was going to make the participants throw these seed bombs because I thought it was going to be interesting. But because it's virtual, I think this is the best way. And the fun thing about seed bombs is that the outer layer will be gone, and then the seeds are going to germinate after a while. And I think that's very interesting. And also to talk more about permaculture in South Korea, I have actually researched about the existing permaculture in Korea as well, and kind of looked in to see if there were any organizations that I could find, like the sanctuary, that was involved. But I could only find a couple, and I think the most active organization that I could find, I could only find one. And I thought that if I could expand my project to somewhere else, I would probably educate South Korean people about permaculture, because I think the idea of nature and kind of preserving the ecosystem isn't really prevalent in South Korea. So that's my next goal.
That's awesome. You know, we were going to open it up to the participants, and because you, as you said, they can't throw the seed bombs. If people want to put in their chat window where you'd like them to throw the bombs on this lot, let's have one camera be in a wide shot so that we can see. Spencer, why don't you be in a wide shot, okay? I'm going to open that up. And then you can just tell people, kind of pan back and forth. And those of you who are with us, just chat and say where you'd like us to throw a seed bomb. Or actually, come online. Just go unmute yourself and ask us where to throw some seed bombs. Let's spend a few minutes throwing seed bombs in Freedom Square.
I'd like to see some seed bombs go right in front of that little white wall.
I have a request to throw a seed bomb where we see like a number of crops growing together or trees growing together. This is so great, by the way.
Also, if people want to just witness, part of our permaculture walk is about witnessing permaculture. If there's aspects of permaculture that you see, you can also text that into the chat box so that we can all be witnessing together, observing together. And Alexis, are you able to see these people's chats, or should we read them to you? Liz Silver says, one request for something low growing like marigolds around the love post at the entrance. Bridget says, marigolds look great by the edge of the walkways. So cheery. Brett says, by the big wall. That's by Freedom Square, maybe by the side. Great. This is exciting. Thank you.
Branda, do you want to talk a little bit about the stage there and what the people are calling the big wall?
Sure. Actually, I mean, you know, Sujin has gotten me to think about permaculture in a broader way. And much like the ecosystem of nature and how every little part of nature adds to the ecosystem, this wall was built by a couple hundred people. Freedom Square, we spent 3 months where different community groups, school groups, church groups, all different kinds of organizations created tiles with messages for hope in building community here in North Rroy. And actually, could you go up there onto the Freedom Square and show us a close-up of some of these messages, maybe even some of the ones. There's a couple, like one says gardening is gangsta. There's all kinds of messages, but you'll see. So what looks like a big mosaic from afar is really many, many small pieces. Be blessed, but more so be a blessing in someone's life each day. That said, education is, I can't quite read it, is fun. And so you can see there's all of these mosaics, and this was a collective public art project that we did, and that now we are, well, not right now, loving hands, and the loving hands of countless volunteers created this, and we have had countless extraordinary musical concerts here at Freedom Square, usually with free food that comes out of our garden. Out of the gardens of College City Growers Gardens, and also often resource fairs as well. And so in a way, this is kind of a social, societal concept of permaculture. It continuously inspires us. Thank you for the suggestion of throwing a seed bomb by there. Okay, we have new messages. Oh, that's wonderful. Alejandro says, my wife tells me that a friend from Mexico who runs a rural boarding school in Oaxaca is implementing a permaculture project. Maybe we could do an exchange with that. That would be awesome. And Mei Ling is working to develop little seed libraries. We would love to do that with you, Mei Ling. And Mei Ling is doing another collaboration with us, which we're really, really excited about, in Nature Lab. So So I think that we should be moving on. But before we leave, does anybody have any questions for Sujin? And you can undo your mic if you want to do that. And just ask the question.
Sujin, just a question on these seed bombs. In terms of the types of seeds that go on there, you'd mentioned they sort of could help with ground cover and, you know, specific crops that may be native or have some kind of performance that is useful in some of these areas that they're being planted in. How do you go about choosing them? And the reason I'm asking is it would be interesting to interface with seed banks to find, you know, maybe species or types of seeds that have sort of, you know, not appeared in the landscape for a while, or similar landscapes that have some really interesting, you know, phytoremediation or ways of restoring nutrients back to the ground. So yeah, if you could just talk a little bit how you know, sort of select what goes into a seed bomb, and be interesting to explore ways to, you know, sort of target different types.
Yeah, I know that the sanctuary does seed exchange workshops where people can come and then they can exchange seeds to increase the diversity of seeds in the area. And because I didn't make the seed bombs myself, and it was kind of part of a workshop or a project where people got to make seed bombs, so I wasn't able to select the different types of seeds, but I think it's really interesting how, like, that we can put in different seeds into these bombs and we can increase the diversity of the ecosystem. And I think if I had to make seed bombs, I would do what you've said of kind of putting in the seeds that aren't really prevalent in the area.
So we have now landed at College City Growers. You watched us walk down the block, which was along the exact route that Sujin has chosen to show you permaculture. And we're turning, this is the College City Growers Garden. And Sujin, you want to just say a little bit about that as we walk into the garden, we bring everyone in?
Yeah, the permaculture that I've spotted at College City Growers Gardens was probably fruit trees and the tires that are used as protection for the crops. So the fruit trees, I didn't really think of it that special when I first came to the sanctuary. But it's actually part of permaculture. So the fruit trees can provide food to the community, because I know that the sanctuary offers food to everyone in the community. And also the crops that are grown in the College City Growers Garden, people can come in during open hours and they can harvest them whenever they want to during the open hours. And this is
Spencer's doing his camera now.
Okay. Continue, we're on him.
Oh, sorry.
This is an example of fair share, which is one of the principles of permaculture. And fair share is an idea of kind of sharing to the community, giving to the earth. And I think that the College City Growers Garden is a perfect example for this. And also the bike tires is also part of permaculture. It's part of the waste-free cycle where you use different objects and supplies that people don't use anymore and then implement that into your permaculture designed garden. And I think it's really useful because it doesn't produce any waste.
Thank you. So we're going to show two or three features of the garden. Alexis, do you want to start with the chickens or and Jim can do the compost, right?
Well, we're in the middle of the garden bed, or in the garden now, so I'll just say quickly about the beds. But Many of these beds are perennial beds. So this whole garden is no-till. We don't till up the ground using like a rotary tiller, anything like that. Many of the plants have been planted here for years, like this strawberry bed here. Strawberries actually get better and more prolific with age. So many of these plants are actually 2 to 3 years old. And they're interplanted with other things, like we have milkweed and other herbs. So they grow well together. And now we can go over to the chickens.
By the way, over there to the right is the Carriage House. This was an abandoned house. Spencer, just pan for a second to the Carriage House, please. Or maybe he doesn't hear me. The Carriage House, can we see the Carriage House for 1 second? Thank you. So the Carriage House was, you know, it was where you kept your horses in the back of a house. The house was torn down, became dilapidated, torn down. It was an empty lot. But the Carriage House is a place where we do our gardening projects. We have an outdoor living, learning classroom upstairs. And we just love having that connected to the alleyway of Troy. Thanks. Just wanted to show you that. Back to Alexis and the chickens.
So we have 9 chickens here in the garden. They just got a new space that incorporates their living space with a compost pile. What you're looking at right now is a buff Orpington, which is a great bird. They're very docile and they lay a lot of eggs. And they're heavy. They don't like to fly out of the coop. But the reason that we have a compost pile in with the chickens is they work together synergistically. So the compost itself, the purpose of it is to help replenish the nutrients in the topsoil that are lost when you grow plants that suck up precious minerals and things like that. You need to replenish that in the soil to continue to grow plants. So we use compost to do that. And the chickens give their manure to the compost, which helps to give it those nutrients that are really needed that you can't really get from plants. And also, as you can see, they eat the table scraps and they eat the bugs out of the compost. So that in turn makes their eggs a lot healthier. A common misconception is that chickens are vegetarians. They're actually not. They eat bugs, they eat meat, and that makes their eggs healthier. Another reason that we have chickens is small livestock incorporated into a victory garden can, as I said, give the topsoil a lot of nutrition, but it also gives us a lot of nutrition. Chickens are really easy to take care of, and they provide a very nutritious animal product in the form of eggs. It's a steady product that you can get every day. And the US government actually used to encourage people to keep chickens as a bumper crop in times of food insecurity, like what we're experiencing right now in North Rroy because of coronavirus. So we think that helping people learn how to take care of chickens, if maybe they've never been exposed to that experience before, can empower them to feel like they can do it. They can grow their own food and vegetables and animal products both.
Thank you for that wonderful description. Can you, 2 questions. One has come up, which is a question about, do you do special stuff for perennials in preparation for the winter, like covering the strawberry tires with straw, or is it all independently self-sustaining? And another question is, what is a victory garden for the people who don't know?
Okay. So I've only been the garden coordinator since March. It's a real honor to be the garden coordinator. And I would just like to say that many hands touch this garden. It's been here for a decade and a half. And it's a permaculture education food justice project. So people come in and they contribute what they can, and the garden kind of takes that in. So I wouldn't say that we do anything specific like covering things. We try to maintain it with what people power that we have, and work with the natural systems to help the garden maintain itself. When we did have a freeze on a couple of weeks ago, when the trees were budding out, we did cover the pear tree. We couldn't cover all the trees because they were too big, but we did, just that one tree was better than none. And the other question is, what is a victory garden? A victory garden, I think the term originates from World War II, when there were interruptions in the food supply chain because of the war. So people were encouraged to start growing their own food in their backyards. And the victory comes from, it's part of the war effort. But I think, to me, the victory garden is you're victorious in taking control of your own food situation and having that food autonomy, which is part of health autonomy, part of economic autonomy, and part of social and environmental justice as well. So it's a victory in that way.
Wow, that's just beautiful. Thank you, Alexis, and excellent shots of the chicken, Spencer. Is Jim Welch there, and can he come and talk to us a little bit about compost, the compost project?
Jim's not here, but I would love to talk about it if you need me to.
Yeah, Christian's not there either, right?
No, I don't see him.
Yeah, why don't you tell us, because the compost project is yet another example of permaculture on Sujin's map.
So Jim Welch and Christian Gregoroscos, who have been involved in this project, do you want to show them the compost? This is all topsoil that we ordered to fill our new raised beds, but this here is compost of various ages. They bring compost and food scraps from all over Troy that would otherwise go into a landfill. And they bring it here for processing. Basically, you let it sit for 6 months to a year until it turns into that rich, very broken down compost to put on your garden beds. And once it's broken down, they take it to their gardens. We give it to community members who need that organic matter for their gardens as well. And it's really the most basic form of recycling, I would say. So they do that every Saturday. They come and turn it. They add wood chips to it so it doesn't smell. And they've been doing it for years. As you can see, this is a couple of years worth of compost in here.
Thank you. And now let's go inside of our hoop house, which was created by many, many volunteers. A lot of students from RPI came together to help build this. And Alexis has been planting new plants. And Kevin, are you still with us? Maybe you could talk about permaculture and what we have been seeing and kind of put it together, especially inside of the hoop house. It won't be windy.
Yeah, could we actually, this is Kevin, could we ask that question first with a little bit of a view of the gardens?
Sure. Here, then we'll just let Alexis show us in here and then we'll come on back out.
Okay, yeah.
So Alexis, why don't you just let us know what we're looking at?
We're looking at our brand new raised beds. And the reason that we built raised beds in here is because this hoop house sits on a former house. So we don't know what kind of contamination it may have, but there's a landscape cloth on the ground, and then we just built these raised beds and filled them with soil, and they've been planted with seedlings that we grew from seed that was donated to us by various community organizations. So Spencer's showing you our tomatoes. We have several varieties of tomatoes. They're all heirloom varieties, so they're non-GMO. They've been passed down from gardener to gardener, seed to seed, and saved year after year. This is a Cherokee purple tomato, which is a beefsteak tomato. There's watermelons. Can we show them the seedling table? We have a ton of starts growing that we've been giving to community members that walk by and ask for them. It's just kind of a pay what you can to encourage that victory garden culture. All of these were started from seeds that we got donated to us. And the real advantage of having a high tunnel, which we're so lucky to have, is that it lets you control the amount of moisture that the plants are getting. It allows you to control the temperature better. So you can more easily adapt to freeze thaws or heavy rains or what have you. So you're more resilient to the effects of climate change, especially when plants like this are really young. They're really sensitive to changes in the weather.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's looking beautiful in there. Okay, let's go outside. And now Kevin is going to talk to us. He is a permaculture educator. And Kevin, you have a little plan for a before question and an after question. Oh, who are these guys? Those are little.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Go on.
So we heard walk away a little bit from the greenhouse fan. So we've got to see this place here a bit, a lot of great things going on. And I just wanted to ask a question of everyone, get all participants involved. And so as perhaps if, as the camera's going around, sort of see maybe in a 360 view slowly, see some of the things that we've been seeing, but let's just quickly ask the question, what do you see here as of right now, as we're looking? And don't worry about, identifying plants or insects or anything like that. That's fine, but whatever comes to mind, and we're looking at first impressions here, and you can think about things on, a big picture level and also the details. Just whatever comes first to your mind, and you can enter it into the chat. It's like a brainstorm.
The first response is complexity, variety.
Yeah. So we're kind of looking at things through our initial lens, wherever we all come from and what our backgrounds are. Yeah, so just take another minute or two and give folks a chance to enter anything they would like into chat, and then talk.
So people are saying so green and lush, interdependence, multi-species living, looks like harvesting would be fun.
Awesome. Oh.
Yeah.
Can you see the bee right there? Can you get, that's a cool shot. Bumblebee. There once was, am I correct? There once was beekeeping going on here, but it's not anymore. Is that right? Oh, cool.
We do actually have a beehive. We'll show you in a minute.
Cool. So I don't know if, but probably that bumblebee is wild, I would say. All right. So yeah, some great comments. So I just wanted to, what I'll mention here as we continue to look at the garden here is try to give you an idea of what probably was here once for thousands and thousands of years. Living in a culture where those connections and the ecosystem is honored, and it sort of feeds the culture. And also it's so valuable now where it comes from a culture that doesn't do that. It's actually eroding all those connections and in a really short time destroying them. So permaculture can deal with those problems that come from the destruction of those. So, and the one I was just going to give an example of the soil here. How many millions of years was there healthy soil here, and now it's like cement because a couple hundred years of a city here has created really compacted soil. So allow these plants being here. Some of them may have deep roots,
are even more valuable to dig that up. And trees too, which trees are being planted here, can do that also, among many things that they can do.
So they're walking down the alley right now, which is behind the College City Growers Garden. And they're going to pass by the new Nature Lab environmental education site. So maybe when we get there, we can get a teeny glimpse of the back of that. It's under construction right now, so it's going to be built out. But maybe we can turn a little bit further and then turn, yeah, that kind of yellowish house is what's going to become the new Nature Lab. And we have the lot next to it as well. So there will be other gardens and stuff developed there.
Kathy?
Yeah.
Quick question, as we're walking behind the gardens, so that's number 2 on your map.
That was, I'm not looking at the map, but that was College City, and this is now we're walking into the L lot, which is on the kind of
on the number 3. Yep.
Yeah, it's number
in between
3.
I think we passed 3325 6th Ave, which I believe is another Troy Community Land Bank property.
Yes.
Is there, do you anticipate that there is the need for more space? I'm only asking this on sort of the heels of RPI's collaboration with TAP and Habitat for Humanity and the Troy Community Land Bank. So is there sort of, as you're, finishing the new Nature Lab space, is there sort of still a desire or need for further space?
Yes, absolutely. And ironically, that you bring it up because we had been looking at that building as being an extension of the current 3319, which is the building right next to it. We have designs to build out and then join into that building.
So this is a wild swarm that Christian managed to catch. Every spring, beehives split. The queen goes off with a bunch of followers to find a new place to live. And that's called a swarm. You may see them like in March and April on telephone poles, on tree limbs. They're just looking for a new place to live. So if you see one of those, you can offer them a beehive and convince them to make their new home in that and capture them that way. And then that's what Christian did. He saw a swarm, he coaxed them into this hive, and then he brought this hive here to the L lot where they are now part of the ecosystem, and you can see them flying in and out. What they're doing is the worker bees, which are all girls, are going out and finding forage. They're going to find flowers and blossoms so they can collect nectar and pollen to bring back to the hive to feed their queen and their babies. Yeah.
So this is Kevin. I was just going to say this is another really good, simple example of how permaculture works. So you got couple connections here that we're strengthening, we're remembering, and we're working on reconnecting, which is one, the trees and the plants need to be pollinated, and the bees need their the pollen. So, for humans to bring bees back into the landscape, and I know some people that are also working on native bees and insects that pollinated the plants here for most of the history. But anyway, yeah, it's just like a way to show that's just like 2 interconnections that are very valuable, important out of like thousands or millions, that is a way for us to restore by bringing bees back.
Also, Kathy, could you tell us about the bioremediation experiments that we've been doing with artists and scientists on this lot?
Sure. Do you guys want to look down the other direction of the L towards Glen Avenue? Well, they're going towards 6th Avenue. So yeah, on that part, thanks so much. We have been working in this area because when we first got this lot, it was really an abandoned dump because it had been fenced off and left for a long time, and people were literally throwing their trash over the fence into this lot. As Steve pointed out in the chat, this is also a problem that still occurs in the alleyway and such. So this is a really beautiful mulberry tree that was self-propagated by birds and seeds there. We didn't plant it ourselves, but it's grown really beautifully and has amazing fruit later in the summer. So, but on this particular area, we did do some soil testing, and we found that there were metals, heavy metals in the soil, like lead and other things. We decided we would try to do something called bioremediation, which is a really complicated process because it's a way to try and suck out the toxins from the soil. We had artists like come and visit and work with the Uptown Summer Youth to try and figure out different ways we could approach this task of looking at how we could kind of help restore the soil. And we did a competition between 3 different areas right in here towards the Glen Avenue side on the far side of the Mulberry Tree. We let the indigenous weeds, which were really biodiverse, just go wild because they are huge, what is called bioaccumulators, which suck up different kinds of toxins from the soil. And so we let them go on their own. Then just to the right of the Mulberry Tree, we planted buckwheat at the time. It's not really there any longer because this was a few years ago. And next to that, we used mycelium. So again, fungi to kind of mix in with the soil. And fungus is an amazing sort of bioaccumulator and sucks up lead and other metals in an incredible way. The mycelium won the competition, which was awesome. But then you're left with the problem, and this is what's the issue with bioremediating soil, is that what do you do with that material once it has sucked up the toxins? Because then you do have to remove that and put it somewhere. So this is a project that's still in process. One of the things we've sort of thought about are ways to plant trees that would actually work in the same manner. So for example, black locust is a very sturdy local tree that has incredibly hard wood. And that's one of the trees that might be something that could be planted on this lot to address this soil issue. And in the meantime, there are many different species of trees that have been planted on the lot, and we're just hoping it will become a kind of regenerating forest over time. It's a really beautiful spot. And again, you can see the tires, the bike tires, the sort of metal part of the tires in these overarching gates where we have different kinds of morning glory and other vines that grow on it and flower in the summer. It's really lovely and good for the bees.
Hey, quick addition to that.
Yeah, thank you.
A good way to point out that permaculture is sort of like goes through a process of mimicking how things work in nature. In other words, like this project here with bioremediation is in the natural healthy ecosystem. The perfect example that happens is like a swamp or a wetland where just before you go into a big river like the Hudson or maybe the ocean, a lot of watersheds go through wetlands, and they have types of plants, like cattail, different ones that will love to feed on any excess nutrient, which to us nowadays would be a lot of toxic stuff that are human made. But sometimes it happens in nature where there's an imbalance and it comes down through the watershed. And the swamps protect the waterways like the ocean and the rivers, because those imbalances don't ever make it there because of the wetlands. And so it's almost like a liver in our bodies. So there's a lot of mimicking. It's biomimicry going on in permaculture, and a lot of great ideas.
Thank you, each of you presenters. It's just been really interesting.
So I want to thank everyone for coming today, and I hope you all learned something new about permaculture or either about the Trroy community. And I want to also thank the sanctuary and the sanctuary members for making this workshop possible and giving me this amazing opportunity. And I think through my personal project, I was able to grow both as a student researcher and as a person. And learning about permaculture changed the way I view the world every day differently. And I hope that you can do this as well from this virtual workshop. So if you have any questions, you can type in the chat.
Sujin, can you talk a little bit more? I'll do a question about, I mean, you really inspired me. I always kind of thought about permaculture in a more kind of academic way, or else like, you know, a visceral way of touching nature. But I never thought about it as a kind of way to deal with this traumatic moment that we're all in with a world, with a pandemic, where we're all social distancing and not connecting to nature. Somehow you've given me a deeper, more philosophical perspective on permaculture. Can you talk about how you arrived at that understanding? Yeah, and how you're taking that on in your life.
Yeah, I think when I was first learning about permaculture, I was more thinking of it academically like you. And I was kind of researching the example of permaculture in the projects. And I think I was thinking more of the philosophical way of permaculture in a different way. I think probably working to develop a workshop like this probably enabled me to think that way, because I was trying to think of a way to explain it to the audience better, more than what is provided in the internet or online sources. So I thought that was the main point. And because I was interested in kind of maintaining the ecosystem since before my personal project, I think that's what made me think more about the world and how small acts can make big impacts. And I think that was a main idea that I wanted to share with everyone today.
Beautiful. Other questions? We have 5 minutes.
Sujin, that was really wonderful. And thank you, Branda and everybody participating, because it was such a fun thing to do and to see the lot through everybody's eyes, and the whole block. And I was really struck when you said earlier about the fact that you want to continue this kind of work in Seoul. Do you have ideas as to where you might want to start with that, if that was something that was to become a reality? Would you start with a home garden, or, you know, how would you think about going about that? It's such a great project.
I think after hearing what Alexis did with her experience was when she started doing acts of permaculture, her neighbor started noticing that and started to get interested in permaculture. I think that's where I would probably start as well, of probably influencing people around me to start something new. And they probably don't really know about permaculture, so I'd probably explain it to them first. And like my mom, she didn't really know about permaculture, but after I started doing my project, she became more interested, and I showed her all my blog posts and what I did in my project. And I think that's the first step of kind of influencing my community to start doing something new. And I think if I had to expand that into a more bigger sense, I would probably join the meetings or gatherings that some organizations do. And I've seen online that some Korean people wanted to learn more about permaculture, but because it's not that prevalent, the blog posts don't really have that much comments or does not have many people participating. But I would probably like to participate in those first.
That's great. And maybe we can do an exchange between Seoul and Troy. That'd be fabulous. Yeah. Thank you.
Sujin, just a quick comment, not a question. I think this was wonderful, and thank you for your and everybody's format for today's talk. It's so nice to be part of this walking tour and see things very intimately and hear people talk about things we're seeing from very different perspectives. I just sort of wanted to throw a resource out there called Genesis. I've been working with the Crop Trust, and it's one of the largest seed banks in the world. And they sort of have this amazing map which shows all of the seed banks and the types of seeds they hold. And what's great is you can compare it to other places around the world where, you know, that your sort of climatic or soil conditions that are to support different types of seeds growing. And it would be interesting to look up that resource to think about not only how the ways in which we can diversify and also be careful not to sort of displace indigenous species with invasive species in Troy, but also in Seoul. So thank you so much. This is such a wonderful project.
Thank you. I think that's great.
And here we are, sadly coming to the end of our walk, walking back down the street on 6th Avenue in North Central Troy in the springtime with new perspectives, new hope because of you, Sujin. We thank you. We'll take it out. We'll take this out with you. Thank you so much, Sujin, for giving us this journey this morning. We deeply appreciate you, and you can have the last words as you say goodbye to us all.
Okay. Thank you for joining today, and I hope you all have a great rest of the week. Thank you.